Every summer, more than 1.5 million people drive toward a mountain that has already taken hundreds of lives. Mount Rainier sits about 60 miles from downtown Seattle. On a clear day, office workers look up from their desks and say, "The mountain is out." It looks close. It looks calm. It looks like a postcard you could walk straight into. Around 10,000 people try to reach the summit every single year. Over the last 5 years, about 56.8% have made it. The mountain does not care how many trip reports you read the night before or how new your boots are. Rainier is not just a hike. Standing over 14,000 feet tall, it is more than 20 dozen glaciers stacked on top of an active volcano. And the weather up there can flip in under an hour, turning a warm afternoon into a whiteout. Families walk in wearing shorts, heading for flower fields that sit only a few miles from cracks in the ice deep enough to swallow a house. By the end of this, you will understand why one of the mountain's most popular summit routes can still expose climbers to deadly hazards, and why Rainier so rarely gives back what it takes. The official height of Mount Rainier is 14,410 feet, the elevation currently used by the National Park Service on its official park materials. That number alone does not explain why this mountain is dangerous. The National Park Service counts 28 named glaciers on its slopes, covering about 30 square miles of ice and snow. That gives Rainier the most glaciated peak in the contiguous United States. Inside that ice sit crevasses, cracks that can run hundreds of feet down and hide under a thin lid of snow. The ground itself keeps moving. Loose rock sits beside walls of shifting ice, and a path that feels solid in the morning can open beneath your boots by afternoon. Then there's the weather. Rainier stands tall and alone, which lets it build its own storms. Park rangers describe a clear blue sky turning to zero visibility within minutes. Sudden storms and high winds are common enough at the higher camps to catch experienced climbers off guard. None of this shows up in the photo from the parking lot. If this story has your attention, hit like and subscribe because it only gets more serious from here. Here's what nobody tells you before they drive up to Mount Rainier. The weather you check from home does not apply once you start climbing. Climbing guides warn that storms often reach Rainier's upper slopes 12 to 24 hours before they reach the towns below it. The temperature swings fast as you climb. For every 1,000 feet gained, the air cools about 3.5 degrees. Climb 4,000 feet in an afternoon, and you have walked into a different season. Paradise, on the south side, can sit under fresh snow, while Longmire, only 18 miles down the road, gets a warm rain. NPS materials put it plainly. Conditions on this mountain shift not by the day, not by the hour, but by the minute. Long before a storm arrives, thin, streaky clouds called mare's tails appear, followed by flying saucer-shaped clouds stacking over the summit. Warning signs climbers are taught to read and often ignore. When clouds drop that low, helicopters cannot fly, and rescue teams cannot move fast enough to reach anyone in time. None of this requires bad luck. It only requires being on the wrong slope when the mountain decides to shift. That single fact, more than any gear failure, explains most of what happens next. Two of Rainier's worst tragedies both ended the same way. Nobody came home, and nobody could be brought back. On June 21, 1981, an immense avalanche of ice and snow broke loose on the Ingraham Glacier while a party was ascending to the summit. 11 climbers were killed, including 10 members of a guided climbing party and their guide, their bodies entombed in a deep crevasse under tons of glacial ice that could not be recovered. A National Park Service Board of Inquiry later ruled it a random event that nobody could have predicted. It remains one of the deadliest mountaineering accidents in American history. Rainier had already written this ending once before. On December 10, 1946, a Marine Corps transport plane carrying 32 men flew into the mountain during a winter storm, blowing off course at 9,000 feet. Search teams did not find the wreckage for 7 months, high on the South Tahoma Glacier. Rangers eventually found multiple victims in and around the wreckage in nearby crevasses. By late August of 1947, officials judged the site too unstable to keep searching, and the Navy approved a mass burial where the plane went down. Both crash sites remain sealed under moving ice today, one from a summer climb, one from a winter flight, on the same mountain, decades apart. Behind 11 names on a brass plaque were people with addresses, jobs, birthdays. Jonathan Laytone was 27 from Ann Arbor, Michigan, one of the climbers swept away on Ingraham Glacier. His camera was recovered from Ingraham Flats after the search ended. One photograph from that roll now hangs inside the Paradise Visitor Center, part of a memorial that grieving families dedicated a year later on June 22, 1982. Families of all 11 gathered there that day, a year to the day after the avalanche. The guide who died with them was Tom O'Brien, a Seattle-area mountaineer whose exact age was never even recorded in news reports. The other victims ranged in age from 21 to 42 and came from as far as Pennsylvania and as close as Seattle. None of their bodies were ever brought down. 35 years earlier, on another flank of the mountain, the Marine crash left its own names on a different plaque at Round Pass, where families gathered in August of 1947 to receive memorial flags instead of their sons. Rescue crews on both mountainsides carried a weight of their own, knowing exactly where the dead were and knowing they could not reach them. That is the cost this mountain keeps collecting. One name, one family, one plaque at a time. Disappointment Cleaver has a reputation as the easy way up. It is the most commonly used route to the summit, but easiest does not mean easy or safe. The route still crosses ground exposed to crevasses, avalanches, falling ice, and rockfall, hazards that don't check a climber's resume before they happen. On July 19, 2026, a rockfall near 11,600 feet on Disappointment Cleaver killed one climber and injured 3 others. The rock did not care how many mountains they had already climbed. This was not the first time a rock decided who lived. Years earlier, on the same mountain, Ed Hammer, a pilot and double amputee training to climb Everest, was killed instantly by a single rock the size of a basketball. Experience can reduce risk, but it cannot control what breaks loose above you. The National Park Service's own route guidance warns that rockfall is a hazard on Disappointment Cleaver, particularly in the exposed sections below the Cleaver, where loose rock can fall from the cliffs above and climbers can also trigger rockfall. Not every route up Rainier carries the same risk. On the north side, past the Carbon Glacier, a line called Liberty Ridge climbs straight up between 2 exposed rock faces, Liberty Wall and Willis Wall. It is one of the mountain's most technical and advanced routes. Fewer than 2 out of every 100 summit attempts go this way, yet it accounts for roughly 1 in 4 climbing deaths on Rainier. On May 26, 2014, a guided team of 6, 2 mountain guides and 4 clients, set out on Liberty Ridge expecting to summit within days. Sometime that Wednesday night, while the team slept in their tents, rock or ice broke loose from above. Search crews later found gear and 6 avalanche beacons on a glacier more than 3,000 feet below their last known camp. The National Park Service concluded there was no viable chance anyone survived the fall. Recovery teams could not go in right away. The same wall that killed the climbers kept dropping rock and ice onto the site where they landed, making the area extremely dangerous for searchers. 3 bodies were eventually recovered, while the remaining 3 were not recovered during the search operation. Liberty Ridge is not the mountain's only steep face, but it shows, in one route, everything that makes Rainier's terrain unforgiving. Most people who see Mount Rainier never plan to climb it. They pull off the highway, walk a paved loop through wildflower meadows near Paradise, take a photo with white slopes in the background, and drive home. That framed, cropped version of the mountain is the one most visitors carry with them, and it leaves out almost everything that makes Rainier dangerous. Between 1897 and 2014, park records list 411 deaths inside Mount Rainier National Park. Only about 100 of those were climbers attempting the summit. The other 3 out of every 4 never touched a rope or an ice axe. They slipped near a waterfall, lost their footing on a wet log, or walked into a river colder and faster than it looked. None of them set out to reach 14,000 feet. Search and rescue calls follow the same pattern year after year. A sprained ankle on a short loop trail, a hiker turned around by sudden fog a mile from the parking lot, a swimmer pulled under near a footbridge. The postcard shows meadow flowers and blue sky, not the current below the trail or the loose gravel above it. That gap between the picture people take home and the record the park keeps is what this mountain looks like before anything goes wrong. Rainier runs on a system built around the fact that people can get into trouble high on the mountain. Anyone traveling on a glacier or climbing above 10,000 feet is required by federal regulation to have a climbing permit and register for the climb. The park requires each climber to pay an annual climbing fee, and the money helps support ranger stations, high camp staffing, route information, and rapid responses to incidents on the mountain. But a permit does not make the mountain predictable. Rangers provide route information and current conditions, yet those conditions can change after the information is issued. The 11 climbers lost on Ingraham Glacier in 1981 were on a permitted, guided route with an experienced leader. The 6 climbers on Liberty Ridge in 2014 were also guided by professionals. Having a permit, a guide, and experience could not remove the hazards built into the terrain. That is the part worth understanding before anyone looks at Rainier from below. The system can tell rescuers where a climbing party planned to go, help rangers monitor conditions, and give climbers access to current information. It cannot control the glacier, stop rockfall, or guarantee that someone who starts up will make it back down. Watch the mountain grow larger through the windshield and park at Paradise under a clear sky. Nothing about that view has changed. The meadows, the crowds, the summit looking close enough to touch. What's changed is what you now know sits behind it. Glaciers older than any trail sign, weather that turns in minutes, and a death toll still climbing on those same slopes. If you've stood at Paradise and looked up yourself, tell us in the comments what it felt like. The warning signs were always there, in cloud shapes, in ranger logs, in a checkout sheet some climbers never got to sign. Rainier has never hidden what it is. It simply lets the postcard speak first. This video is for education, not instruction. Talk to rangers and a licensed guide before you climb. If this story kept you watching, that's exactly why the mountain keeps its reputation. Like this video, subscribe for more. See you in the next one.